Okay, everybody, get in the mood.
Where does yesterday's future, which is already here,
figured out which
meet
direction.
today's future, which is about to happen, and tomorrow's future, which could be just minutes away?
Pretending I'm wearing a watch.
Welcome to Technology Revolution, the future of now, where host Bonnie D. Graham asks savvy futurists for their predictions about the tech-driven trends that are shaping our future right now. Here's your host, who will take us into the future of now, Bonnie D. Graham.
Thank you very much to Ryan Treasure for introducing me. I'm Bonnie D. Happy to be here, and I've invited back three of my, don't tell anybody else, my favorite people. We are going to talk about utilities, powering up all kinds of utilities. We're going to have predictions as usual. I'm thrilled to have them back. And everybody just wave hello. We are live on LinkedIn, on Facebook twice, and on YouTube. And I have a fresh opening for you all. I think you're going to find this interesting. So here we go. Welcome to Technology Revolution, the future of now, where AI meets innovation. We'll explore the how and the why and the when and the where and again the how. With Bonnie D and her Scarlett Mic leading the way, three utilities visionaries are back to light up our day. Wave when I call your name. Martin Stenzig is here. Vicki Zheng is here. Crawford Owens too, predicting AI-powered breakthroughs designed for me and you. From smart grids to sensors where progress is found, the future of utilities in AI will be boldly profound. Here's the new part. Martin maps water and telecom with AI sharpened sight. Vicki explores gas utilities with insights burning bright. Crawford electrifies the grid. Crawford, you have to look like you're electrifying. Electrifies the grid with forecasts powerful and new. They'll envision AI redefining what utilities can do for you. Gas networks, electric flows, water cycles that roam, and telecom signals that keep the world connected at work and at home. All rise with AI's guidance, smarter systems in sync, redesigning our lifelines faster than what we think. What'd you think? All good?
All
Ready?
good.
Awesome.
Okay, now I'm going to do your individual. Here we go. Martin, this must be the 99th one you're on so often, and I'm so grateful to you. So, from Germany's tech corridors to America's innovation stage, Martin is reshaping utilities on the modern page. He arrived for just weeks, yet decades later, he still stands a leader whose vision transforms industries across the lands. A pilot and beekeeper at heart, he sees patterns far above the ground where data flows, networks speak, and smarter grids are found. Now, water and telecom predictions take his spotlight with flair. From leak detection to connectivity, AI solutions are aware. Co-founder of Alpha Oak, Martin brings clarity to it all, turning tangled data into insights to answer utilities' call. Martin, they're calling you. From pipelines to fiber links, his foresight makes the path clear. Martin's next generation frameworks pull the future in near. Martin, that's brand new. What'd you think?
Very nice. Very nice. I mean, maybe even too much credit, but
Well,
but
that's
yeah.
okay. I'm predicting. It gives you something to live up to for next year. Vicki is back. Welcome, Vicki. From engineering roots to the forefront of grid design, Vicki shapes the future where utilities align. A strategist of systems where data flows deep, Vicki builds models that learn, predict, and never sleep. I don't know if she sleeps, but the models don't. Vicki's spotlight gas utilities where pipelines must adapt with AI optimizing flows and risks tightly mapped. She strengthens resilience as demand curves shift, ensuring energy delivery stays steady and stays swift. Vicki translates complexity so decisions become clear, guiding gas utilities into a bold new frontier. With precision, with purpose, she answers innovation's call. Vicki, I'm calling you. Vicki helps modern energy rise powerfully for all. Vicki, what'd you think?
Definitely something for me to live up to next year, too.
There you go. And Crawford is back. Crawford brings decades of insight to the utility space where data meets operations and strategy claims its place. A master of transformation with a sharp analytical mind, he uncovers opportunities that others strive to find. His focus, electricity, grids that flex, forecast, and thrive. AI strengthening systems that keep the whole world alive. From outage predictions to faults caught before a spark, he makes power safer, smarter, lighting up the dark. With leadership grounded, that's a electricity word there, with leadership grounded in clarity, purpose, and trust, Crawford guides utilities forward in the changes they must. From grid to enterprise, he transforms missions wall to wall, a champion of innovation, always ready to answer the call. Crawford, what'd you think?
Oh, that's pretty good.
I'll take pretty
Almost,
good.
almost like I almost could live up to that someday.
There you go. So, with our visionary panelists, the future shines bright, and so do the lights in my studio here. As AI transforms utility with data-driven light, from smart grids to renewables, new pathways will debut. We'll explore AI powering up tomorrow's utilities for you. So, overall, what'd you think? You like it?
Yeah.
Very good.
Definitely.
I still think I'm the only host who introduces with rhymes. I don't know. Have you ever been on any other webinars or events like this? Anybody? Nope.
Nope.
Okay. That's my
You may
claim.
be starting a
Not like
trend.
this, no.
Okay, not like this. There you go. I tell people I'm an acquired taste. Okay, let's go to the quotes. I've asked you each to send me a new quote. Yes, another new quote from a fictional character in a movie or a TV show or a song lyric. And let's see where we go with these briefly before we get to predictions. Martin has sent a quote, a classic from Emmett Doc Brown, played by the wonderful Christopher Lloyd. The movie, of course, is Back to the Future, the start of a franchise of sci-fi comedies. This was in 1985, written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, directed by Zemeckis, blah, 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 blah. This was produced by Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. The Adventures, if anybody's been sitting hiding under a rock or under a car somewhere or a McFly. High school student Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox. Eccentric scientist Dr. Emmett Doc Brown. And in the third film, a lady I love to see on screen, Clara Clayton, played by Mary Steenburgen. They use a DeLorean time machine to time travel to different periods in the history of Hill Valley, California, blah, blah, blah. And in 2019, Marty McFly was selected, do you know this, Martin, by Empire Magazine as the 12th greatest movie character of all time. There we go.
Didn't know that. That's a new one.
There you go. So here's the quote Martin has picked. It's a classic in itself. Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads. Okay, Martin, putting you on speaker view, and why don't you tell us what this has to do with the future of utilities and AI? Go.
Yeah, I think that if we're looking at projects that we're building today, we are always sort of starting from the status quo. And sometimes we're sort of missing the point of, well, that infrastructure that I'm trying to improve or rebuild, I might not even need in the future. Yeah. So on the AI side, it's sort of drastic. We're talking about lines of code that we might need to or might want to sort of refactor or rebuild. And the answer might be, well, if I build it as a model, a completely different approach, I don't need the proverbial road anymore. I don't need the infrastructure that I've just created. I'm just building a model together that I can retrain and pretty much adjust on the fly as part of this. So that's the context. But frankly, in our company, we're using this quite frequently, where we're saying it's like, yeah, okay, we need to rip him out of the new normal and get him into almost a new dimension to sort of saying, okay, you need to let go. Just think about it with a fresh set of eyes.
Fresh set of eyes. Very, very interesting. Thank you. I think we do still need roads, but we need different kinds of roads. We need inroads too, don't we, Martin? Inroads into utilities. Let me ask a question. Alpha Oak, when did you start it? Let's just get a pinpoint on the map of time. When did the company actually launch?
Really, we really activated at the first of the year. So, but since then, I mean, we were talking about it earlier about timelines and things that we have done. And we put a slide together with all the events that happened this year, and it's way too much for one slide. So it's great to see. So we certainly didn't sit around this year. A lot happened, but the year flew by. Just it was one day. It feels like so. Oh,
There we go. That deserves some applause. Starting a new company there's been a debate going on for probably decades, eons, on when is the best time to start a new company. And they say, oh, it depends on the economy. And the answer is, hell no. It's always a good time to start a new company if you have a problem that needs to be solved and you know how to do it uniquely well. There you go. So congratulations to you, Martin. The fact that you couldn't fit it all on one slide, that says a lot, doesn't it? That says a lot.
I think so.
And how are the bees, by the way?
At the moment, going down for the winter break, so they are pretty pretty lazy right now in a good way. But they're clustering up because it's raining like hell outside, and they will just sit inside and eat their food stores. So it's good.
Seattle rain. I lived in Eugene, Oregon for many years, and they used to joke we didn't need suntan oil. We needed Vaseline, petroleum jelly to stop rusting because of all the rain. Never mind, everybody. Okay, Vicki is up next. Vicki has sent a beautiful quote. We had to go back and forth. I did my research on this, Vicki, and she said, AI played a little hallucination trick on her with the source of the quote, but she liked the quote so much, she let me find the real source and we agreed on it. So the quote is from Julian Andrew Baker, played by an actor named Austin Nichols, and also said in this show by Nathan Scott, played by an actor named James Lafferty. And it's a teen drama TV series called One Tree Hill, which aired from 2003 to 2012. Martin, I'm sure you watched it. The quote is delivered in voiceover most of the time, especially by Julian Baker or Nathan Scott, encapsulating the themes of hope, dreams, and finding miracles in everyday life, leading into the mantra. And then I'll tell you that in a second. It was created by Mark Schwann, premiered in September 2003. It was on the WB then, if anybody remembers. And after a while, WB merged into UPN, which formed the CW, and it finished up on the CW. In the fictional town of Tree Hill, North Carolina. I say that because I used to live there, North Carolina. It follows two half-brothers who compete for their high school basketball team and the drama from their respective romantic relationships. Oh, talk about gossip. Here's the quote Vicki has picked. The world is full of magic. You just have to believe in it. Oh, Vicki, I love this quote. I'm going to put it on a pillow, or I can't put it on a wall. They'll arrest me. But Vicki, what are we doing with this? What does this have to do with utilities and AI? Go ahead.
I think, like when we're talking about looking back the year, right? This is such a fast growing year. The beginning of the year when we talk about AI versus now, it feels like definitely multi-years. And that's actually a common feeling many of us are having. Like it feels really fast. Yes, it feels like a lot. So, and what we are seeing a lot of times is, just like I mentioned, I become a victim of the AI hallucination when I'm trying to have the reference because I think this should be something fairly okay for, the AI to do. However, we're still seeing troubles and issues. And I think these days it's very easy to see problem, right? Because we want to solve problem. It's very easy to see problem. It's very easy to be pessimistic about any new technology. I keep thinking back, like, I was reading, I'm a history nerd, right? So I was thinking about when I was reading when every new technology was initially being brought up. There's issues, there are problems, people are calling doomsday, right? Those kind of things. But at the same time, right, all of those technology, end of the day, still bring us so much value, better benefits, give us extra time. If I can imagine having internet when I was really little for all the question I have, instead of flipping through books, it's going to be amazing. So again, I think, again, this is a very optimistic quote. I try to, I really enjoyed it because I do think, whether you think there's a problem, an issue, or challenges that technology brings, I think technology itself represents, our hard work, right? Trying to make things better. And there is definitely an optimistic lens on those. So yeah, we just have to look into it and believe it.
I like that. And you are aligned with the philosophy of my show. Somebody said to me recently, Bonnie, in 2026, why don't you do a show about all of the doom and gloom about AI and it's going to do this and kill that and steal that and move this and it's going to be terrible. And I said, because everybody else is doing it. My show is about opportunity. It's about optimism. It's about options. It's about good benefits, opportunities and possibilities. And I like that, Vicki, a lot. And by the way, I think I was the last one on my street in my community to buy a microwave oven. I can't tell you how many years ago, but I said, what is that thing? You're going to put a cup in it and it's going to make it hot? How could that be possible? And eventually I bought a great big one. I put it in. That is a time saver, right? Just don't put a metal spoon in the cup of hot chocolate. We won't go there. Okay, and I'll tell you after the show about how a microwave was used to murder somebody in a detective show I just watched last night. It was really cool. From the next room, through the wall. I'll tell you later, but not right now. It was very weird. Okay, thank you, Vicki. Crawford. Crawford has picked a 4-word quote. I haven't had this one on the show in ages, Crawford, so I was happy to see it. It's very interesting. It is spoken by Spoon Boy. I think that gives it all away, played by Rowan Witt. Of course, it's the sci-fi action film from 1999, The Matrix, written and directed by the Wachowskis or Wachowskis, however one you say it. The first installment in the Matrix film series. Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, Carrie Ann Moss, Hugo Weaving, Joe Pantoliano, and a dystopian future where humanity is unknowingly trapped inside I'm trying to make this like a movie trailer. Crawford, just bear with me. Unknowingly trapped inside a simulated reality, the Matrix, which intelligent machines have created. Why? To distract humans while using their bodies as an energy source. When computer programmer Thomas Anderson, under the hacker alias Neo, uncovers the truth, he joins a rebellion against the machines, along with other people who've been freed from the Matrix. Spoon Boy was a nickname given to an unnamed red pill who is one of a handful of potential privileged enough to study under the oracle. I'm going to stop right there. Very interesting. And the quote, Crawford's going to take us there. There is no spoon. Okay, Crawford, bail me out here. What does this look like? What are we talking about here? I didn't see The Matrix, by the way. Too scary for me. Go.
So the whole premise of the spoon was for Neo to understand that there was rules inside the machine, but he had to understand that there were really no rules, right? That they were making the rules as they go. And for the utilities, for the different companies we're talking about, as they start introducing AI, we're going into a new realm of how we're using technology. And there's going to be some rules that are on the road today, but we're going to have to think out of the box, not to use a cliche, around how to do things going forward so that if we're going to embrace AI and be more innovative in these industries, we've got to start thinking differently. We've been through decades, the utility industry across the board, everyone started about the same time. Formerly, utilities have been around for a little less than 120 years as formal companies, and they really haven't changed a whole lot until recently with the advent of, advanced systems, better reporting, better technology in the last 2 decades is where we're seeing leaps, and where we're going with AI, the potential, we're going a lot further in the future than we thought just, 10 years ago, and things that are possible.
There is no spoon.
There is no spoon.
Thank you very much.
Except the one in your microwave.
Oh, yeah. Learned that lesson once. That was enough. I got a recipe once when I was about to sell my house in Durham, North Carolina, and I wanted the house to smell like fresh baking. And I had a recipe for making muffins in little glass Pyrex custard cups. So I put a couple in to the microwave and set it for about a minute and a half. Well, the batter burned, exploded, filled the microwave with black smoke. The fire alarms went off. The people were about to come and view the house very soon, Vicki. Very soon. The realtor was on the way. I ended up walking around with newspapers, fanning the smoke out. The inside of the microwave was burned beyond belief. There was smoke all over the house. It stank. I was spraying. I was lighting candles, whatever I could do. And somehow I still sold the house, but it was, don't follow that recipe, please. So it was just a spoon. It was the little bit of batter in a glass. Never mind. Okay. So we learned our lesson. Thank you all for the quotes. That was very interesting. Let's go to predictions. Martin, I'm going to read a couple of your predictions, and I want you to frame them in the view of water and telecom, which are going to be your specialties today. So Martin's first prediction is purpose-built AI models on the edge. Models in drones to identify assets and damages. Models in transformers to identify problems. I like that. That's before and after, right? Find the problems and identify the assets and the damages. So Martin, putting you back on speaker view, why don't you take us through your part of utilities today? Let's go.
Yeah, I think we talked about it in various prediction shows, but the AI has become compact. So in the past, we usually would send AI into really, really big computer and really, really big processing machines. Now the models are becoming more and more compact and smaller, but the infrastructure, so the computer power that we need is obviously becoming much more compressed. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to actually run complete AI models, usually purpose-built models, on what we call the edge. So rather than running them in a big data center, you can now run your AI model, or parts of it anyways, in the field. So that might be part of a pump. It might be part of a transmission tower, to sort of use the telecom example. So what we want to do is rather than having to take all the raw data and feed it into a central, matrix type big computer, we want to do parts of the assessment in the field so that A, we can do that without sending lots of data to a central hub. So we can keep the data locally, which helps us with transmission of lots of information. But it also, I can pre-aggregate sort of the problem. I can come up with hey, I've assessed the different input parameters that I'm seeing, and I came to the conclusion that it's a windstorm that caused this problem, or the power is out, or the power is still there, but my connectivity to my mothership is not there. So to make that assessment, to make that initial assessment, we can now have AI models that are resident on the local small computer, almost like you have the AI model that is on your smartphone, or an AI model that is part of your microwave that we just discussed. So because of hardware shrinkage, model compression, but also then the purpose-built approach of building AI models, all of that coming together allows us to be much more efficient, much closer to where the action is actually taking place than having to funnel everything into a big fat data center and consume a lot of energy. So that's that prediction.
Okay, very, very interesting. Specifically for telecom, how would this impact? What are the drones looking for in terms of telecom?
So we always have that assessment, and it's applicable to telecom, but it's also applicable to electric. So everybody that has above ground assets, whenever we have windstorms, whenever we have damages, whenever we need to assess problems, I don't want the technician to have to climb up ladders or climb up towers to look at, in this case, antennas. What we can do is we can now take drones. And with AI modeling, we can even determine automatic what the best flight paths to figure out what the inspection cycle should be. And the models, the visual models these days are so good that we should be able to assess damage automatically. So based on a trained model that is shown, this is what a broken antenna looks like, this is what a good antenna looks like, et cetera, et cetera. We can build models that can do the assessment of all of that. So at the end of the day, and the restrictions are really more on the government side, on the FAA side. But if we assume that we own the area around the tower, we can use a fully autonomous drone that flies up there, looks at stuff, makes an initial assessment, comes back down, and essentially lets us know what it is, without the technician having to go up into the area, without having to manually, plot a flight plan, or a flight path. All of that can be done with AI today.
Thank you. Let me just go around the table briefly. Vicki or Crawford, or both of you, drones in your field of utilities. Is this something that you see as well with being AI powered and making a difference? Crawford, you're nodding first. Any comments?
Yeah, absolutely. Martin's bang on accurate with that. It will help to better predict damages in the system before they happen by giving you more real-time updates of the state of the equipment. And that's whether it's telco, it could be electric equipment, like you said, any overhead or above ground asset, to be able to do that with. Even above ground pipeline, if you're in the energy business of pipeline above ground, you'd also be able to pull those predictions from there. So yeah, it's very beneficial.
Predictive analytics. Vicki, any thoughts on your area?
Absolutely. For gas
We
utilities,
need a little
there's
bit louder, Vicki. Just a little
yeah,
bit louder.
because gas industries there are miles and miles of pipelines, right? And those times, usually they're passing through not very habitable areas. So drone becomes a great tool for capturing images, doing high level checks or inspections. So we can detect, maybe there is a small leak in the miles of the pipeline. So absolutely very, very valid.
Thank you very much. Okay, Martin, anything you want to say back to your colleagues here before I move on? You good?
Yep. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Vicki, I'm looking at your prediction number one, and you say better reliability and safety with fewer unplanned outages or hazardous leaks. Let's talk about the hazardous leaks in the gas lines, Vicki. That is important. It matters to a lot of people, and we all know when we call the gas company and say, there's a leak. We know that. That's a very human detection mechanism, right? That way before we had AI. So Vicky, how is AI helping this? Go ahead.
Absolutely. So I think you use example, in last time when you moved in, right? There are some leave behind infrastructures with your, network, for example. Same thing with the gas utilities too. There are a lot of aging infrastructures out there, right? So company, as they are, drive profit is always a trade-off between reliability, risk management, and profitability. So, before times, right? You either spend a lot of man hours, a lot of the time, building redundancies to do, risk management, risk reductions. It's always like a trade-off between the two. With AI as a technology there, you are, essentially be able to we call it the sweat of the asset a little bit more, right? Even if you have aging infrastructure with proper care and proper predictions on, hey, I do see a thinning, right? For example, on a pipeline for one of my, my utility infrastructures, I can be more proactive versus reactive on detecting the leak, reporting out to the environmental health groups that, hey, I do have a leak. Then I start to have to fix it really quickly. Otherwise, I'm facing a fine. So I think, again, between the risk management and also, profitability, AI can be a technology to essentially help both, right? We want it to be safer, more reliable, at the same time, still making sure we're, as a company, still profitable.
Facing a fine. Okay. How does that come into play? I'm not
Oh,
familiar with that.
that's a very interesting part of,
Yeah.
depends on the state, obviously.
Hmm.
But many, many times we have this, basically a certain level of leaks. You have to, within your 24 hours of your first detect, you have to make attempt. That's called a first attempt. Otherwise, if you cannot show proof you have a first attempt to repair it, there are certain states like California, you're fined by hours.
Wow. I didn't know that. The only reference point I have, Vicky, is when I used to live on Long Island in New York and we had a clearing snow window of opportunity and you had 24 hours if you lived in a like in a building. I did the building management had 24 hours to clear the sidewalk and any access for cars and people walking or driving that belonged to that building or the frontage, the easement in front on the street. We had 24 hours to clear our sidewalks. And I think there was I never saw a fine, but you all scurried to get your shovels. That's the only way I can relate to that. Is there anything in other utilities, Crawford or Martin, that you can relate to what Vicky said in terms of a window of
Uh,
correction?
yeah, not only that window of correction, but if you don't have the correction, you have an incident. The biggest fine, I think, for utility and gas was $1 billion because they
Hello?
had a significant incident. So yeah, it can get it quite expensive for you if you don't do these predictive analytics and make sure that your equipment is in good shape.
When
Yeah, it
was
was
that
billion with a
billion?
B.
When was that? I know I'm still
Uh,
billioning it.
the
When was that
incident
set? Many years ago was this?
The incident was 2010 that the incident occurred, and the fine was levied, I think 2013, 2014, like 2, 3 years later, after all the investigations were done.
$1 billion in 2013. What would that be today?
With inflation, ooh, I had to go pull the calculator out, but it's definitely more than 1 billion.
That was my point exactly. Like billion. I know. Martin, anything you can relate to what Vicky said in terms of
Yeah,
fines?
absolutely. I mean, we have the same thing on the water side. It's funny how the discussion on the water side actually changed over the last few years. When I started in this business and we talked to water utilities, you very often got the answer of like, "Hey, it's just water. It's going in the ground. Who cares?" So we have lots of it. These days, with the shortage of water, we're getting more and more concerned about it. So the same pressure differential approaches that we're taking in gas in order to see whether or not we have leaks, we can apply on the water side as well. And they are used. Yeah. So we're getting much more concerned about water leaks, even though they don't have as much harm to the environment. But because the commodity is getting more and more precious, we're more and more concerned about that. So we're putting more and more value onto leaks, onto the occurrence of leaks and putting more effort into preventing leaks or rectifying leaks. So But again, finding leaks and finding leaks preemptively is usually used with AI models, or can be used with AI models, where you have look at pressure differentials, pressures that are not correct, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that is certainly applicable to water as well.
Well, I'll tell you, I wish we had that opportunity at a residential level because I was looking, I get a direct water bill where I'm living in this community in Tennessee, and electricity and water bill, but it shows me how much volume I actually used. And I got a bill about a year ago. I've been here 3 years. About a year ago, I got a bill and it was outrageously higher than the month before. And live alone. I use the dishwasher. I do all my dishes by hand. I do the laundry maybe once a week, once every 10 days. I got plenty of stuff. Don't ask about that, please. And I wasn't using that much. I don't wash my car. I don't have a fish tank. I don't have a dog I'm washing. I have an irrigation system, but it doesn't use that much. And I couldn't figure it out. And I had to get a plumber to come in and take a look at different outlets of water around the property. And then I had to get somebody, the irrigation guy, to come in. And we were looking. I had somebody finally open up the meters. There's a lid, a heavy metal lid on the 2 meters. I have two water meters, one for sewer, one for, don't even ask, prior owner put in an extra meter. I don't know. Not everybody has one. I was getting two water bills. And they looked in and they said, Bonnie, that meter's going boop, 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 boop. It is spinning, it's spinning, it's spinning, it's spinning. I said, well, what in the hell's happened? Anyway, it turns out that one of the hose bibs at the front of the house had a leak that was going into the crawl space, and it was just a drip, 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 drip attached to the irrigation system. And they're standing there looking and they're saying, come look at this. And the meter's going bup, 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 in a circle, it was like a dance. Bup, bup, bup. Okay, we finally figured it out, but I had to call two services to come. Luckily, they didn't charge a service charge to come and figure out where the leak was. Martin, if there had been a drone or something that could
I
have
know.
pinpointed that, it would have not only saved money, it wasn't even about the money, it was about the waste of water and the
No. I
potential
I had the
damage.
same thing, but my predictive analytics engine was the neighbor that came by and saw water coming out of the ground in front of my front yard. It's like, I think you have a problem. There's a whole lot of water coming out of the ground. I'm like,
Well,
yeah.
that's what my neighbors told me. They said, when you walk on your lawn, if it's mushy, you know that it's leaking into the lawn. I said, no, at least we don't have that problem. But it was something against one of the something or other. Anyway, we
The
figured it
the
out.
visual inspection come right there.
Yes, it's called the mushy shoes inspection too. Absolutely. So this would be nice if it was at a consumer residential level, but I speak from experience. Okay, let's go to Crawford. Your predictions. This is a different way of looking at this. Crawford's first prediction is demand forecasting and energy management will become increasingly important as the need for AI and data centers continues to rise. Let's talk about demand forecasting. I think that's really, really, really important because we know AI takes a lot of power and we're
A
not
lot.
always aware of it. And people say, what? It's AI, it's a program, it's ChatGPT. What do you mean power? What do you mean it could power a city? What are you talking about? Okay, what's left? So, Crawford, I'm putting you on speaker view. Why don't you try to allay our fears, please? What is AI going to do to make this better?
So well, first, AI is kind of causing the problem, right? But what can be done to make it better is better demand forecasting. And that's the reason why I use that quote, there is no spoon. We've got to change the way we've been looking at how we distribute power, and how we're utilizing the models around it and how people are consuming power. And we can use AI models to help us build those new sets of rules of how we're going to interact, because AI is not going anywhere. It's a heightened demand for it. It's being pushed all over the globe. People see it as the way to help us enhance our inspections on the utility side. We've already talked about that. We've talked about the fact that people are wanting to engage more and get more data from the last call we were on, but all that comes at a cost. So as we're building these data centers, we need to also be looking at our demand forecasting models and make sure we're not crippling our infrastructure by adding all this new demand into the system. AI will be able to help us do that with the right models. And Vicki's one of our masters at that, that's on the call. And people like Vicki will be able to help us to build those models so that we can tell what these stressors are and then start bringing different types of energy into the market, so we have a better mix at lower cost, and we're not, robbing Peter to pay Paul, as the old saying goes when it comes to adding data centers into our mix.
And thank you. And I'm going to have one more prediction before we go around the table and see what Vicky next and then Martin have to say. Your prediction three, Crawford, is a resurgence in exploring demand pricing
Mhm.
and discounting, rebating based on time of use consumption or time or use consumption. How does AI figure into that, Crawford?
So how AI figures into that, we talked about the fact that there's more demand. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple ways that you can deal with the increase in demand. One is to create more supply, and it's also to conserve. And how best to get people to conserve, give them an incentive. So using the AI models, we can build better models about when peak demand is actually going to occur in the different markets. And then using that to drive people to say, hey, if you don't use your washer, we were talking about that a moment ago, to do
Yep.
all that laundry on Thursday and
Yep.
wait and do it on Friday morning, I'll cut your utility bill by X cents per kilowatt hour. And so that will allow people to better manage when they use their power, which will lead to conservation. Also about discounting and rebating, similar vein around when you're actually going to use it. So maybe, that there's a high demand on data when people are at home at night. So maybe you give people discounts for not using power at night because now everyone's on Netflix, right? Everybody's out there on YouTube and Google searching and doing all the streaming entertainment. That's going to put a lot of strain on the system. So therefore, hey, if you don't do that, I'll give you a discount. If you use that power, say maybe at 4 a.m, as opposed, and it can actually start helping people change habits. It can give some pressure off the system. And we've seen this before. We did this back in the 90s and early 2000s when we had the first of the web the internet was really becoming more commercialized. And so we're seeing a resurgence of that. Just now it's, exponentially larger, the demand that's going to be on the system. So that was a mouthful.
No, that was great. That's what I was looking for. We have things like water restriction here, where they tell you, on my side of the street, such as it is, I can only water with any kind of automated irrigation system or sprinkler system. One of those back and forth things. You can only do it on certain days of the week, and if they come by and find you, they will fine you, Vicki. They will fine you if they can prove you're out there. But if you use a hose and you're hand watering, you can do it any time of the day or night, any day of the week, which is interesting. So let's talk about demand pricing and rebating. Vicki, in your field where you're this guru, how does that figure in with you? Is that something that's being done? Is it useful?
I think that's definitely a very interesting part. Actually, when I was dealing with a lot of companies, pricing is actually one of the first AI use cases many companies are trying to bring up, right? For utility, when we're talking about, we're facing millions and millions of customers, and we have to predict either, a residential or commercial kind of usage, that it becomes a really powerful use case for AI. And I think this is another area, like, Crawford, like you mentioned, right? That we are also seeing so much utility consumption by those AI data centers, and we're exploring new sources of renewables. So there, until we start building very gigantic, kind of storage or battery storage area for utilities, we also need to basically balance off, for certain source of energy, such as wind and solar, right? Sometimes it's not just about the generation or the production of the electricity, it's also about consumption. How can we use, efficiently, not to waste it in the grid, but use it efficiently throughout the day of time, the peak versus the lower time, using supplements, other source of energy such as gas for intermediate when we're having some off balance by the demand and supply. So I think those are very heavily going to be using a system or AI to help figure out, because this is going to be beyond our traditional, somebody's building spreadsheet type of ways.
Oh, still using spreadsheets. We've talked about that for years. Martin, any thoughts on encouraging people to use for demand? Could you say to people, don't go on your social media platforms until midnight or before 5 o'clock, please? If you're retired, go on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram before 5. That's like you used to, the joke that why are all the retirees driving at 5 o'clock and clogging up the Long Island Expressway when people just got off work and they need to get home? And there's Murray. I'm sorry, I always use Murray. Murray, I apologize. He's in the first lane and he's like 30 miles an hour all the way out to Patchogue. Anyway, that's a Long Island joke. Martin, what do you think? Is this applicable to your areas?
In parts, yes. So certainly, what we can do on the water side is we can certainly apply similar algorithms to put people into consumption patterns. Now, The difference, I think, on the water side is that we do not have the personal, contributors to the water supply. There's a central, usually a central supplier of water. Now that might change years from now if we have sort of Crawford might start his own personal desalinization plant somewhere on the Atlantic or something.
Hold
But
on. Crawford, are you listening to, is this breaking news? Go ahead, Martin. We'll give Crawford
It's
a
not.
chance.
It's an inside joke, and I caught that, Martin.
I put you back on the camera so we could see your reaction. Go ahead, Martin.
So that's kind of what is different. Yeah. On the electric side, we have this new concept of a bidirectional, your consumer and a provider at the same time. On the water side, you usually don't have that. You're just a consumer. So it's a one directional network. But some of the same things still apply. We still want to work with patterns on consumptions. How do we reduce overall consumptions? How can we give the end customer ideas, to your point, how to find leaks or consuming
Yes.
things that we can improve on in order to drive down my personal water bill and my personal water consumption. So that's one. On the telecom side, there it's probably more about growth predictions. To Crawford's point, I've been, just funny enough, is here in the Washington area. We have one big sort of summer market in the area. And I was standing at the market literally with my telephone in my hand and couldn't get hold of my family because the network was completely overloaded. And I'm looking around, I'm like, what the heck? You know what? In this day of age, I can't get connected because the network isn't capable. So I talked to one of the people that is actually facilitating this and organizing this. They're like, yeah, we had to talk with that particular telecom provider that they need to do something about this. But those are the situations where you take it for granted these days that, hey, wherever I go, I have connectivity, phone and internet connectivity, and I'm sitting there and I'm literally walking a mile in order to leave my wife a message saying, hey, whenever you get this, I will be at this intersection for the next hours, and then I'm walking back into the dark zone. So this is all preventable, but again, AI on some other components obviously will play a major role in order to predict that and have those kinds of preventative approaches to not have us stand in crowds and say, oh, I can't get to my cloud right now. So
Well, that's a key part of a lot of story plots in detective shows and murder mystery shows on TV, where somebody is in the woods or in a basement or in an alley or in a dark area where they can't get their phone. They can't call 911. They can't call the police. They can't call their husband or wife or babysitter and say, I'm trapped here. Would you come and solve the problem and get me out of here? Or I'm going to be late, like I just got murdered, whatever it is. And it's part of the plot is that you can't get that connectivity at a critical moment, and it's become a plot line. Oh, or I should say a plots line, but we'll leave that one alone. Anyway, very, very interesting. I think Martin, I'm trying to remember, there's a place somewhere I don't think it's here where I live now because I don't drive that much anymore, but there was a place, I think when I was living in Durham or Long Island, where there was a space between cell towers and you had a door. Yes, you know what I'm talking about. And you couldn't
yeah,
get, yeah, go ahead. Do you have any of
actually,
those?
absolutely. I mean, I'm living on the West Coast, so we still have lots of spaces like that. But the
Yeah.
the funny thing is, there's actually a company based here out of Seattle. What they are doing is they're plotting those. So they're literally having equipment for various cell providers where all they're doing is they're essentially think of it like an Uber car, but with lots of antennas on the roof, and they're driving through the
Mm-hmm.
countryside and plotting out exactly those kind of, let's call them white spaces where there's bad connectivity going on.
Yep.
Selling that data then to telecom providers for them to take, measures, either acquire, partner, or put up new cell towers. In my neck of the woods, I have a place in the country here. For years, I was literally in one of those spots where I would
Mm-hmm.
take a left on my property, and for good or
Yep.
for bad, the cell phone was gone. So
Yep.
I found ways working around it. But then, years later, because of exactly what I just described, suddenly a cell phone tower pops up on
Uh-huh.
line of sight, hill of or top of the hill, and I'm like, in one way, it's great. I have cell phone reception. On the other hand, it was so nice to not have cell phone reception at all. So it's sort of good and bad. But yes, we certainly have a lot of that in telco,
Yeah.
and we're doing a lot of activities to sort of work around it. And then you talked about, let's make sure as we have two cell phone towers that are overlapping so that if one goes down, I at least
Mm.
have some sort of reception there. All
And
of
I,
those
I
things.
was going to mention something you mentioned earlier, and I want to go around the table on this. We've got about 8 minutes left. We're doing fine. I have one more prediction I want to pull up for Martin, but you talked about pattern recognition, how AI is so good at pattern recognition. And this is something that certain people among us, maybe we're nerds or geeks, we like to see those commonalities, those in sync numbers or letters or patterns in something we're looking at. We're working, we're studying a hobby or a profession. We like to see, yeah, there were 5 of these and 10 of these. And the overlap was people who excel in statistics, making the numbers lie where they want them to. They find sometimes I'm getting silly here. Martin, pattern briefly, let's just go around the table in terms of pattern recognition, how that's important to your area of utilities. Martin, brief, and then we'll go to Crawford and then Vicki. What do you think?
I mentioned it before.
Yeah.
When we're talking about taking pictures in order to train a machine learning model, that's really
Hmm.
a pattern detection. You're essentially training the model as in what looks like it's healthy or good or working in working condition, and then what does a broken one look like? And so that's all we do. Yeah, and we
Yep.
can then combine different models and put them in sequence to say, okay, this is not even an antenna, but this is an antenna and a good antenna, a bad antenna. Yeah? And I can train various models and then stitch them together in sequence to sort of have a progression of, hey, what you're looking at, is certainly not an antenna. So let's not even do the assessment whether or not it's an antenna that is broken or not. It's the same thing that you always see is like cat dog. Yeah, you give an ML algorithm a picture and say, is this a cat or is this a dog? Yeah, and
Mm.
sometimes it's a really weird looking cat that turns out to be a dog or the other way around.
Crawford, there is no antenna.
There's no antenna.
Antenna boy. Crawford, thoughts on pattern recognition with AI? What do you think? What's it doing for you?
Yeah, based on what I talked about earlier, pattern recognition is a must, right? You have to
Hmm.
be able to build demand profiles of when models of when you think that people are going to consume. And so it's an absolute must that we look for the patterns of when people are consuming, when are the data centers at the highest amount, right? What is the infrastructure able to tolerate? What equipment's getting hot, because in the summertime, it's not cooling off enough because of the demand on it, so we can get it replaced before it fails. All
Yep.
those are things that we have to look at with these models and why it's so important that these models be built. And the time to do it is right now because demand for all these things is growing exponentially. We're throwing up data centers the way it's going. We're going to have more data centers than we have power to provide to them
Ah,
in a
interesting.
very short time. This came out from the CEO of IBM just a couple of days ago in one of the press junkets he was on. He was talking about it. We are outpacing the infrastructure, so we've got to get in mode of predicting and then doing the capital investment to make these things happen. And we're talking a lot about electricity, but to Martin's point earlier, that leakage on water also very important
Yep.
because we need a lot of water to keep those systems cooled. So
Cool.
that whole thing about demand, it plays for water as well. Nobody in the infrastructure tent gets out without paying a toll on this one.
Yep. And accurate predictions too. Vicky, briefly, what do you think about pattern recognition in gas utilities?
Yeah, I think we are probably in history we now possess or have access to the most data to even do that pattern recognition, right?
Mhm.
Traditionally, we know for the longest time we do seasonality, temperature changes, weathers, right? But now with utility and like Crawford mentioned, it could be water, could be things. There are tons of data sources that I've seen customers are pulling in for pattern recognition. For example, hey, there's a trend of making bread again, right? Is that going to potentially making everybody using more gas or more electricity, right? There are
Martin.
social things, right? Is there a new trend with TikTok or X, right? With a wave on people changing certain people's behavior. So again, I think with the foundational large language model and just in general data access, we have probably tons of data to help with the pattern recognition.
Yeah.
The thing about that is maybe more about looking into the really valuable ones instead of the noises. So absolutely a very fascinating time about data. If you wanted to, I heard people talking about data being the new crude oils.
Great point. The important ones, the valuable ones, the patterns that matter for us. Crawford, there is a pattern. I'm sorry. I'm not going to forget Spoon Boy for a while there. Okay. Never mind. Martin, I want to squeeze in. We've got about 3 minutes here, but I want to squeeze in just one more prediction from you on the business side. You say generic tabular models. How is AI involved in this to make assessment of business data easier? And this seems to me to be an umbrella for everything we're talking about here.
So,
just a couple of sentences. Go ahead.
let me try this in simple terms. So all of this generic LLMs that we've seen, OpenAI, you name the names, were all essentially based on you take lots of text, you throw it at a model, and the model then sort of finds pattern in the text. Yeah? And it's very oversimplified, Vicki, apologies for that. What we need in business, though, is rather than looking at lots of flowing text and documents that are good for lawyers and artists and people that are writing documents, is we need the same thing for tabular data, structured data. So there are some vendors in the market that have kind of come up with, essentially the pendant, what I want to call it, to the LLM. It's essentially a generic tabular model that you can now throw at a set of data, tabular data, and it looks at that and looks at what's there and then fills in the gaps. So to oversimplify it, you have the first 10 records give you examples of what good looks like. The next 100 records have holes in them. And what the model does is, because it knows the 10 records are complete, uses that as examples to fill in the blanks in the remainder of that Excel sheet. Very, very oversimplified. So don't
That's
take that
fine.
to the bank. But the driver now is that this advent of using a generic model that is not particularly trained to any particular purpose, we're now seeing applicable to business data as well. And there's in particular that has done great strides in the last couple of months to bring something to market. So have a look at it. Super exciting. I think there's a lot more of that coming, but we're seeing sort of that generic model now being used on the business side that I predict will take us to the next step.
Thank you. Thanks for the overview. And thank you to the three of you. I have to tell you that you are my final technology revolution, the future of now topical show of the year. This is part 2 for both of you. I appreciate that. Martin has been on my Cool Dude Predictions show. I did a special Cool Dudes Hall of Fame prediction last week, and we're doing part 2 of that next Wednesday. But in January, I'll be doing my 11th annual regular predictions crystal ball special, January 7th, 14th, 21st, and maybe the 28th as well. And then I'll start the new season of specific topics like we're doing here. So I want to thank the three of you so much for coming back. I know it's a busy time of year for you. And I think we came up with overviews that apply to way more, Vicki, than just the gas utilities, and Crawford electricity, and Martin water and telecom. We're talking about AI benefits in pattern recognition, in finding the right kinds of data to use, in demand of all kinds of industries. I think this is much bigger than what we just talked about. You can tell me after the show if I'm wrong. I want to thank Jordan Henson, our engineer who got us on the Voice America Media Business Channel, and I'm the engineer who got us on LinkedIn and Facebook twice and YouTube. I'm Bonnie D, and I wish everybody from the standpoint of regular, it's been a wonderful year. This is 49 live streaming shows on this series alone this year, and about 150 more on all my other shows. And I want to thank our listeners and our viewers for being here and for encouraging us and for your comments on social media, and especially people on LinkedIn with all the impressions. Listen, kids, for me, 500 impressions on one show is viral. I don't need 1 billion. I don't need 1 million. I don't need, just that means people are paying attention, and that's what we're all about. So we're going to close out with our regular music here, and panelists stick around. I want to tell you the story about the killer microwave. So here we go. Let's see if we can get this going. Okay.
Are you tired of hearing the future is already here?
Yes.
We are too.
We are.
That may have been yesterday's future, but today's future hasn't happened
Not
yet.
quite.
Take a deep breath. Tune out the hype. the noise, and turn up the volume. Savvy, art of the possible technology visionaries talking about how today's innovations right now are shaping every aspect of our real future. We'll laser focus our spotlight on buzzworthy tech like artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, augmented reality, and lots more. Clear your calendar and open your mind for Technology Revolution, the future of now. With the most upbeat host on global radio, Bonnie D. Graham. Listen anywhere, anytime, on any device.
Thank you to the voice of Ryan Treasure. I have to tell you all that was recorded about 6 years ago, and I still love it because we must have been prescient. We must have known the future. We were going to say, everybody wave goodbye. We're going to say goodbye to LinkedIn and Facebook and
Holidays.
and all of that. Happy holidays.